Hey guys, tonight we are stepping into the marble halls of Constantinople, the glittering capital of the Roman Empire. The year is 536 AD. You are Procopius, the official court historian. You live in the eye of the world, a city of immense wealth and power under Emperor Justinian. But one morning, you look up, and the sun is wrong. It is a pale blue disk without brightness, casting no shadows. A mysterious dry fog has descended, turning noon into twilight. It will not leave for 18 months. Let's be honest, we often fear the collapse of civilization, but we rarely imagine it happening simply because the sky turned dark. This is the true story of the Volcanic Winter and the Plague of Justinian, a decade of cold, hunger, and pestilence that brought the Roman world to its knees, recorded by the man who watched it all from the golden cage of the palace. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. As always, I'd love to see where in the world you're listening from, so please drop your city and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into the year the sun died. The sound hits you before the sight. It is not merely a noise, it is a physical pressure, a wall of vibration that presses against your chest and rattles the ivory stylus in your hand. Roar. It is a deep, guttural thrum, like the sound of the ocean crashing into a cavern. But this ocean is made of human voices. 100,000 throats are screaming in unison, a collective release of ecstasy and power that rises from the stone belly of the city and assaults the heavens. You are standing on the spina, the massive, raised stone spine that runs down the center of the hippodrome. You pause, closing your eyes for a moment to steady yourself against the sensory overload. The air here is aggressive. It is thick, hot, and heavy, a suffocating soup of smells. The sharp, ammoniac tang of horse sweat, the dry, chalky dust kicking up from the track, the unwashed bodies of the mob, and, cutting through it all, the cloying, expensive sweetness of saffron water being sprinkled by slaves in the VIP boxes to cool the elite. Open your eyes. Look up. You are at the bottom of a colossal canyon, carved not from rock, but from white marble and living flesh. The steep, tiered benches rise dizzyingly high on either side of you, packed to bursting. The crowd is a chaotic, undulating mosaic of color. The blue faction on the left, the green on the right screaming, waving banners, their faces flushed with the heat and the glory of the moment. Above them, the sky is a dome of violent, relentless blue. There is not a wisp of cloud to soften the glare. The sun hangs directly overhead, a blazing, heavy coin of gold that hammers down onto the city. It reflects off the polished marble columns and the gilded bronze statues of the spina, fracturing into sparks of white fire that force you to squint. You turn your gaze upward, towards the kathisma. It hangs above the track like a jewel box, the private imperial balcony that connects the great palace directly to the stadium. And there, framed by purple silk curtains that flutter lazily in the hot breeze, sits the center of the universe. Emperor Justinian. From this distance, he is a small figure, but his presence fills the arena. He is wearing the stemma, the heavy imperial crown. The sunlight catches the encrusted pearls, rubies, and emeralds, turning his head into a star. He sits perfectly motionless, a golden idol watching his worshippers. He is not cheering. He is smiling, a small, satisfied smile of a man who believes he has grabbed history by the throat and forced it to bend to his will. He has rewritten the laws. He is building the greatest church the world has ever seen. And now he has reconquered the West. The crowd's roar shifts. The chaotic screaming tightens into a rhythmic, pounding chant, a two-beat pulse that shakes the ground beneath your sandals. Belisarius, Belisarius. The massive bronze gates at the far end of the sandy track groan open. The rusty screech of the hinges is lost under the cheering. The triumph begins. Your friend, your master, the General Belisarius, steps onto the hot sand. He does not ride in a golden chariot like the emperors of old. Justinian is too jealous for that. Belisarius walks. He walks on foot, a soldier among soldiers. His armor is simple, coated in the fine red dust of the African deserts. His face is lined with the deep exhaustion of a long campaign, but his eyes are clear. He walks with a quiet, dangerous grace, the stride of a man who has dismantled a kingdom. But behind him flows the river of his success. Clink, clatter, grind. The heavy wooden wheels of the tribute wagons groan under the weight of a kingdom's ransom. You step back as the spoils of the Vandal wars pass within arm's reach. It is a staggering, dizzying display of plunder. You see silver plates the size of shields, stacked like coins, flashing in the sun. You see chests overflowing with gold, spilling out as the wagons jolt over the ruts. You see the specific, heavy artifacts of history, the menorah, and the silver trumpets of the Temple of Jerusalem, looted by Rome 5 centuries ago, stolen by the Vandals, and now, finally, brought home. History itself is being marched in circles for your amusement. And then, the human spoils. Gelimer, the king of the Vandals, walks in silver chains. He is a tall man with the blonde hair of the north, blinking in the harsh, unforgiving light of Roman victory. He is laughing a mad, broken sound that is swallowed by the crowd. He wears a purple cloak that is no longer his. You look down at the wax tablet in your hand. The heat of the sun has softened the wax, making it ready to receive your words. You are Procopius, the historian. It is your duty to freeze this moment, to capture this peak of civilization before it fades. You feel the sun pressing down on your shoulders, a heavy, warm, reassuring weight. You can feel the heat radiating up through the soles of your sandals from the baking stone. This heat is the secret of the empire. This blazing, generous star is what ripened the millions of bushels of grain in Egypt that arrived this morning to feed this mob. It is what warmed the grapes for the wine that will flow in the taverns tonight. It is the engine of the world, reliable as a heartbeat, constant as the tide. The empire is solar-powered, and the batteries are full. You press the sharp tip of your stylus into the soft wax. You write with a flourish, your hand steady and confident. The sun shines upon a Rome restored. You carve into the tablet. The shadows have been banished, and the Golden Age has returned. You believe it. Standing here, deafened by the roar of victory, blinded by the glitter of gold and the brilliance of the sky, it is impossible to imagine anything else. The world feels solid. The future feels guaranteed. You close the tablet with a satisfying snap. You trust the sun. You trust the heat. You do not know that the sky above you is a fragile glass ceiling, and somewhere, thousands of miles away, a mountain has already shattered it. You do not know that this is the last warm day you will feel for a decade. You are standing at the absolute zenith of human civilization, cheering at the light, completely unaware that the long, cold night has already begun. Constantinople, March, 536 AD. It begins with a morning that refuses to break. You wake in your chambers in the great palace. Your internal clock, attuned to the rhythms of the court, tells you it should be dawn. You wait for the familiar, aggressive slash of golden light to cut across your mosaic floor, the signal that the day has begun. It does not come. Instead, a strange, muddy twilight seeps through the window shutters. It is a grey, sickly illumination, devoid of warmth or direction. You rise, shivering. The air in your room is unseasonably cold, a damp chill that clings to the marble walls and settles deep in your lungs. You wrap your heavy woolen cloak tight around your shoulders, a garment you should have packed away weeks ago, and step out onto the balcony that overlooks the Bosphorus. The view stops your breath. The world has lost its colour. The sparkling blue waters of the strait, usually dancing with whitecaps and sunlight, are a flat, oily sheet of slate grey. The green hills of the Asian shore are muted, as if seen through a piece of dirty glass. The city itself, usually a riot of white marble and red tile, looks drained, a sketch of itself drawn in charcoal. You look up, searching for the source of this gloom. You search for the sun, you find it, and your stomach turns over. It is there, hanging high in the southern sky, but it is unrecognizable. It is not the blinding, golden furnace you worshipped in the hippodrome last summer. It is a pale, bluish disk. It has no rays. It has no halo. You can stare directly at it without squinting, without pain. It looks like the moon, a dead, cold rock floating in a sky that is not blue, but a milky, opaque white. There are no clouds. This is the most terrifying part. If there were storm clouds, thunderheads piling up from the Thracian plain, you would understand. But the sky is featureless. A high, dry fog hangs in the upper atmosphere, a veil of dust so fine and so pervasive that it has swallowed the heavens. You leave the palace and walk down into the Mese, the main street. The mood in the city is brittle. The noise of the market is muted, hushed by the heavy air. People are moving quickly, heads down, clutching their cloaks. They glance up at the sky with fearful, superstitious eyes, then quickly look away, making the sign of the cross. You stop at a fruit stall. The vendor, a man you know to be loud and boisterous, is silent. He is staring at his hands. You look down, and you realize what is wrong. There are no shadows. It is noon. The sun is directly overhead. And yet, beneath the carts, beneath the columns of the forum, beneath your own feet, there is no sharp definition of dark and light. The light is diffuse, scattering everywhere, but illuminating nothing. The world has been rendered flat. It is a sensation of profound disorientation, as if you have stepped into a painting or a dream. You continue to the law courts, your mind racing. You are a historian. You search your memory for a precedent. Is this an eclipse? No. An eclipse is a fleeting moment of darkness, a celestial blink. This has lasted since you woke up. Is it a storm? No. The air is bone dry. There is no smell of rain, only a faint, acrid scent of sulfur and dust that tickles the back of your throat. You meet a colleague, a senator. He grabs your arm, his grip tight. "Procopius," he whispers, his eyes wide. "The priests say God has turned his face from us. They say the sun is dying." "It is a phenomenon," you say, your voice sounding thin and unconvincing in the grey air. "A mist. It will pass," but it does not pass. The day drags on in a perpetual dim twilight. The lamps in the great palace are lit at midday, their flames sputtering in the heavy air. You sit at your desk, trying to work, but the cold is invasive. It creeps up from the stone floor, numbing your toes. You can see your breath in the air in March, in Constantinople, the city of the sun. You take your stylus. You have a duty to record this, even if you do not understand it. You write the words that will echo down through the centuries, a testimony of the impossible. For the sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon, during the whole year. You stare at the sentence. It feels like a blasphemy against nature. The sun is the source of all order. It is the clock of the empire, the giver of life. If the sun has failed, then the laws of the world have been suspended. Later that afternoon, you go to the gardens. You find the imperial gardener standing over a bed of early spring crocus flowers. They should be opening, reaching for the warmth. Instead, they are closed, their petals tight and waxy. They are confused. They are waiting for a signal that is not coming. The gardener looks at you, his face lined with a peasant's ancient, instinctual fear. "The earth is cold, master," he says quietly. "The sap does not run. If the sun does not shine, the wheat will not grow." The wheat. The thought hits you with the force of a physical blow. You look towards the harbour, where the grain ships from Egypt usually dock. The empire runs on bread. The mob runs on bread. If the wheat does not grow, the sun sets early, vanishing into the haze long before it reaches the horizon. The city plunges into a darkness so absolute it feels like the bottom of a well. You stand on your balcony again, wrapping your cloak tighter. The chill is biting now. It feels like the depths of January. You look out at the invisible city. You can hear the low murmur of prayers rising from 1,000 homes. They are praying for the sun to return. They are praying for the nightmare to end with the dawn. But deep in your gut, you feel a cold, heavy stone of dread. You know the patterns of the world. Storms break, eclipses pass, clouds drift. This is none of those things. This is a stillness, a stagnation. The sky has not changed. It has broken. You go back inside and blow out your lamp, plunging your room into the same darkness that has swallowed the world. You lie in your bed, shivering under the wool, waiting for a morning that you are no longer sure will come. You are living in the first day of a year that will have no summer. Constantinople, June, 536 AD. The calendar on your desk insists that it is summer. The water clock marks the hours of what should be long, sweltering days. In the memories of every man and woman in the city, June is a time of heat, of sweat, of the blinding white glare of the sun on the marble pavements. It is the season when the city throws open its windows to catch the breeze from the Bosphorus, when the fruit ripens in the orchards, and when the stone of the hippodrome bakes until it burns the soles of your feet. But this year, the calendar is a liar. You stand in the imperial gardens of the great palace, wrapped in a heavy woolen cloak that you would normally wear in the depths of January. The air is still, stagnant, and biting. It does not carry the scent of blooming jasmine or warming earth. It smells of cold dust and dry leaves. You look at the rose bushes, the pride of the emperor's gardeners. They are confused. They have put out buds, tricked by the lengthening days of spring, but the buds have not opened. They sit tight, waxy, and frozen on the stems, like small, clenched fists. Some have turned black, rotting before they could ever bloom. The trees, usually a canopy of vibrant green shade, are shedding their leaves months too early, a slow, yellow rain that litters the meticulously swept paths. Above you, the sky remains the same terrifying, milky white sheet that descended in March. The dry fog has not lifted. It hangs in the upper atmosphere, a permanent, high-altitude shroud. The sun is there, a pale, impotent ghost. You can look directly at it without blinking. It offers no warmth. It casts no shadows. At noon, the light is no brighter than the early dawn of a cloudy winter day. The psychological toll of this cadaverous light, as you have described it in your notes, is becoming a palpable weight on the city. The people move through the streets with a hunched, fearful posture. The boisterous energy of the capital has been dampened. Conversations are hushed. In the markets, men argue not with passion, but with a brittle, anxious irritability. The absence of shadows makes the city look flat, two-dimensional, like a painting that has lost its depth. You return to the administrative wing of the palace. You have a meeting with a military courier who has just arrived from the eastern frontier, from the war against the Persians in Mesopotamia. He is a hardened soldier, a centurion who has seen blood and desert heat. But as he stands before you and the other ministers, he looks shaken. "It is not just here," the soldier reports, his voice rough. "It is the same in Antioch. It is the same in Edessa, and in Mesopotamia." He pauses, as if he does not quite believe his own words. "In Mesopotamia, sirs, it is snowing." The room falls silent. Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, a place of legendary, baking heat. Snow in June? It is an impossibility. It is a violation of the natural order so profound that it sounds like madness. The soldiers are freezing in their tents, the courier continues. The birds, they are falling from the sky. They are dead, stiff with cold. The wool on the sheep is thick, as if it were midwinter. You write this down, your hand trembling slightly. This is not a local phenomenon. It is not a curse on Constantinople alone. The entire world has gone cold. Justinian enters the room. He looks tired. The strain of the Gothic war, the building projects, the laws, it is all etched on his face. But this is an enemy he cannot fight with legions or edicts. He listens to the report of the snow. He looks out the window at the dim, grey garden. "God is testing us," he murmurs, his voice low. We must pray harder. We must build faster. The Hagia Sophia. It must be finished. A light for the world. He retreats into his theology, into his grand projects. He is trying to build his way out of the apocalypse. But you, Procopius, are a pragmatist. You leave the palace and ride out through the Golden Gate to the farmlands beyond the Theodosian walls. You need to see the truth with your own eyes. The fields of Thrace, usually a waving sea of golden wheat at this time of year, are a scene of devastation. The wheat is there. It stands tall in the fields. But it is the wrong colour. It is a sickly, pale green, streaked with brown rot. You step down from your horse and walk into the field. You reach out and touch a stalk of grain. It is damp, cold, and slimy. You break open the head of the wheat. Inside, where there should be a hard, ripening kernel of grain, there is only a shriveled, milky mush. The crop has failed. The cold and the lack of sunlight have stopped the plants from photosynthesizing. The wheat has simply stopped growing. It is rotting on the stalk. A farmer stands nearby, watching you. He does not bow. He does not speak. He just stares at his ruined field with eyes that have gone beyond fear into a deep, hollow shock. He knows what this means. He knows that the harvest is not just poor, it is non-existent. You look back at the great city walls, rising high and invincible in the distance. Inside those walls are 500,000 people. They are the masters of the world. They have gold, they have armies, they have laws. But as you stand in the cold mud of the rotting field, holding the dead wheat in your hand, you realize that none of that matters. The empire is a beast that eats millions of bushels of grain a year, and the food is gone. You climb back onto your horse. The ride back to the city feels like a funeral procession. The summer that never came is not just a strange weather event. It is a sentence. The sun has abandoned you, and without the sun, the earth has closed its hand. The cold you feel in the air is no longer just a chill. It is the first touch of the famine that is coming to kill the world. Thrace, autumn, 536 AD. The ride out from the Golden Gate takes you away from the stone safety of Constantinople and into the breadbasket of the hinterland. You are travelling through the rich farmlands of Thrace, the fields that have fed the city for centuries. By the calendar, it should be the season of harvest. The air should be filled with the golden dust of chaff, the rhythmic swish-hiss of the scythes, and the songs of reapers gathering the bounty. The roads should be clogged with ox carts groaning under the weight of grain. Instead, the landscape is silent. You pull your horse to a stop on a low ridge overlooking a valley of wheat. The view is a monochromatic nightmare. The field is not a sea of waving gold. It is a stagnant lake of pale, sickly green and bruised brown. The wheat stalks are standing, yes, but they are not upright and proud. They are slumped, sodden, and heavy with moisture. You dismount, your boots sinking into mud that should be dry, hard-packed earth by now. You walk into the crop. The air here smells wrong. It does not smell of warm straw and sun. It smells of mildew, of damp cellar earth, of fermentation. You reach out and take a head of wheat in your hand. It feels cold and slimy. You crush it between your fingers. There is no snap of dry husk, no hard kernel of grain inside. There is only a wet, milky pulp that dissolves into a grey paste on your skin. The cause is clear. A brutal lesson in botany. Without the heat of the sun, the grain could not ripen. Without the light to drive the sap, the plants simply stopped. And then, in the relentless, damp cold of this sunless year, the rot set in. The fungus took hold. The food of the empire has dissolved before it could ever be harvested. You leave the wheat and ride toward the terraced hillsides, usually the home of the vineyards. Wine is not a luxury in the Roman world. It is a necessity. The method by which water is made safe to drink, a source of calories for the soldier and the slave alike. The vines are skeletal. They cling to the trellises like dead fingers. The leaves, which should be turning a vibrant autumn russet, are black and slimy on the ground. You find a cluster of grapes. They are tiny, hard, green stones, shriveled by the frost, their skins wrinkled and tough. You taste one. It is bitter, acrid, a concentrated bead of acid. There is no sugar. There will be no vintage this year. The wine presses will be silent. As you ride deeper into the countryside, the most terrifying aspect is not what you see, but what you do not hear. The dry fog has not just choked the plants, it has silenced the world. You realize with a start that you cannot hear the buzzing of bees. The insects, dependent on the warmth and the flowers, have vanished. The birds, deprived of insects and seeds, have fallen silent or fallen dead. The sky is empty of swallows. The only sound is the wind hissing through the dead grass and the sucking sound of your horse's hooves in the mud. You pass a farmhouse. The door is open, swinging aimlessly in the damp breeze. The family is there, sitting in the doorway. They are not working. There is no work to do. The father is sharpening a scythe, a mindless, repetitive motion, his eyes fixed on the blackened field. He does not look up as you pass. He knows what you are, an official from the city, come to count a harvest that does not exist. There is nothing for the taxman, he says, his voice flat, carrying across the yard. Tell the emperor he can tax the rot if he wants it. You do not stop to argue. There is nothing to tax. You turn your horse back towards the city. Ahead of you, the massive, triple walls of Constantinople rise up, a man-made mountain range of limestone and brick. Inside those walls, 500,000 people are waiting. They are waiting for the carts to arrive. They are waiting for the bread fleet from Egypt. They are waiting for the harvest festival. You feel a cold, sick weight in your stomach, heavier than the stone of the walls. You carry the knowledge that will destroy them. You know that the countryside, usually the mother that feeds the city, has become a graveyard. The umbilical cord has been cut. As you ride through the Golden Gate, the shadow of the archway falls over you. You look at the bustling crowds, at the bakers lighting their ovens, at the mothers buying flour in the market. They are living on the last reserves of the past. They are eating the ghosts of last year's sun. You return to your study in the palace, your cloak damp with the fog. You open your ledger, the book where you record the grain supply. You dip your pen in the ink. You look at the column for the local harvest. And for the first time in the history of the city, you write a single terrifying number, 0. The Golden Horn, spring, 537 AD. The harvest in Thrace is dead, a black rot upon the fields. Yet, Constantinople does not scream, it waits. The 500,000 souls of this city cling to a single, fundamental truth. Rome does not feed itself. It is fed by the Nile. For centuries, the survival of the empire has hung on the arrival of the Classis Alexandrina, the massive grain fleet that sails from Egypt each spring. These bulbous, deep-bellied ships are the arteries of the state, pumping the lifeblood of wheat into the heart of the capital. As long as the ships come, the ovens bake. As long as the bread is warm, the emperor sits on his throne. You stand on the stone quays of the Golden Horn, the vast natural harbour that curves like a scythe along the city's northern edge. The air is cold, damp, and smells of stagnant salt water. The dry fog still chokes the Bosphorus, turning the usually sparkling waves into a sheet of dull, heaving lead. You are surrounded by a crowd, but it is not the joyous mob of the Hippodrome. It is a tense, vibrating silence. The bakers are here. The market traders are here. The poor, who exist entirely on the Annona, the daily bread dole, are here. Thousands of eyes are fixed on the mouth of the harbour, straining to pierce the grey mist for the familiar, salvation shape of a sail. And then they appear. Ghostly shapes coalesce out of the fog, first 1, then 10, then 100. The great fleet of Egypt has survived the winter storms. A ripple of sound passes through the crowd, a collective exhale that sounds like the wind in dry grass. They are safe. The food is here, but you are a man of details. You are a watcher. And as the lead ship glides toward the quay, you notice a terrifying wrongness. A fully laden grain ship is a beast of burden. It sits low and heavy, its hull buried deep in the water, groaning under the immense tonnage of wheat. The waterline should be invisible, submerged beneath the waves. But this ship is dancing. It bobs lightly on the chop. It sits high, exposing feet of barnacle-encrusted hull that should be underwater. It looks like a cork. It is empty. The ship bumps against the dock with a hollow, wooden thud that echoes in the stunned silence. The gangplank is lowered. The captain walks down, not with the swagger of a man bringing salvation, but with the slump of a man marching to his execution. He walks past the frozen dockworkers, his eyes fixed on the stones, until he stands before the imperial prefect. You are close enough to hear his voice, a dry whisper that carries the weight of a death sentence. "The river," the captain says, his voice shaking. The river did not rise. The news ripples out from the docks, moving faster than any contagion. The Nile floods, the annual hydraulic miracle that turns the Egyptian desert into the most fertile farmland on earth, have failed. The monsoon rains in distant Ethiopia, driven by the heat of the sun, did not come, because the sun did not shine. The climate disaster has broken the oldest, most reliable clock in the world. The ships are not entirely empty. They carry the scrapings of the silos, the last dusty reserves of Alexandria. But it is a fraction, perhaps a tenth, of what the city needs to survive the winter. You watch as the unloading begins. Usually, this is a scene of chaotic abundance, sacks bursting, golden grain spilling onto the stones, the air filled with dust and laughter. Today, it is a scene of miserly, military precision. Soldiers with drawn swords surround the gangplanks. Every sack is tallied. Every spilled handful is scrambled for by desperate women who crawl between the soldiers' legs. The logic of the empire has just been shattered. You look at the massive warehouses that line the harbour, built to hold the bounty of a continent. Now, they will remain cavernous, echoing voids. You return to the palace through streets that are beginning to simmer with a new, dangerous energy. The relief has curdled into shock, and the shock is hardening into fear. The price of bread in the bakeries has already doubled since this morning. By sunset, it will triple. You enter your office and pull down the heavy, leather-bound ledger of the Annona. You dip your pen. You must do the unthinkable. You must calculate the rations. You must divide the meagre arrival by the 500,000 mouths waiting outside. You do the math. You check the figures again, praying for a mistake. There is no mistake. With a steady hand, you draw a line through the usual daily allowance. You write a new number. It is a death sentence for the poor, written in black ink. The city has food for 2 months. After that, there is nothing. You look out your window at the dim blue sun. You realize then that the empire is not a fortress of stone and iron. It is a fragile web of wind, rain, and river water, and the web has snapped. The Golden City is no longer the capital of the world. It is a stone cage on the edge of the sea, and the door has just been locked. Constantinople, summer, 537 AD. The news from the docks travels up the maze, the city's great marble spine, faster than any chariot. The ships are empty. The Nile has failed. Panic is a contagion. You can hear it spreading before you see it. Standing in the Forum of Constantine, usually a cacophony of haggling merchants and shouting porters, you notice the rhythm has broken. The friendly hum of commerce has been replaced by the aggressive thunder of heavy wooden shutters being slammed tight and iron bolts sliding home. It is the sound of the city closing its throat. You walk toward the bakeries. For centuries, the warm, yeasty perfume of baking bread has been the scent of safety in this city. It meant the emperor was providing. Today, the ovens are cold. The air smells only of stale dust and fear. The bakers, men with flour-dusted arms and terrified eyes, are not selling, they are hoarding. They stand behind their barred doors, guarding their last sacks of flour with knives. And when a loaf does appear, the transaction is an obscenity. You watch a scene unfold near a side alley. A woman, dressed in the fine silk of a merchant's wife, is begging. She holds out a handful of silver siliqua coins to a man hiding a loaf under his cloak. She lets the coins fall into his hand. He does not look at them. He shakes his head. She adds a heavy gold ring, the metal flashing in the dim, grey light. He hesitates, his eyes greedy, but then he looks at the bread in his hands. He shakes his head again. "I cannot eat gold," he hisses, and hurries away into the shadows. The economy of the Roman Empire, a complex machine built on taxation, minting, and credit, is dissolving before your eyes. It is reverting to the primal logic of the stomach. A gold solidus, the coin that pays the legions and bribes kings, is suddenly just a cold, yellow disc, worth less than a handful of mouldy barley. But the true horror is not in the private markets. It is in the public square. It is the annona. For hundreds of years, the Roman state has made a sacred bargain with its people. The emperor rules, and in return, the citizens receive the panis civilis, the free bread dole. It is the glue that holds the social order together. You return to the palace, to the administrative heart of the crisis. The mood is suffocating. Emperor Justinian is pacing the floor of the consistory, his face pale with a mixture of rage and impotence. He is a man who believes he can legislate reality. He has rewritten the laws of Rome. He believes he can rewrite the laws of supply and demand. "They are hoarding," he snaps, his voice echoing in the vaulted room. "The bakers are traitors. Issue an edict. Fix the price. Any man who sells above the fixed rate loses his hand." You write the edict. You stamp it with the heavy imperial seal. But as the wax hardens, you know it is ink on parchment, nothing more. You cannot legislate abundance. The edict is posted in the forums, but the bread does not appear. The bakers simply vanish into the shadows. They would rather risk the emperor's wrath than give away their own survival. Then comes the decision you dreaded. The calculation has been made. The reserves are too low. The annona must be cut. You stand in the distribution yard the next morning. It is a vast, enclosed courtyard where thousands of the city's poor gather daily. They are already there, a sea of gaunt, grey faces, holding out their tesserae, the wooden tokens that guarantee their daily loaf. They are patient. They trust the system. They trust the emperor. The officials step onto the raised platform. They do not open the heavy bronze doors of the granary. Instead, they unroll a scroll. "By order of the emperor," the herald shouts, his voice cracking slightly. "Due to the failure of the Nile, the ration is suspended for all but the essential guilds." There is a moment of absolute, stunned silence. It is the sound of a contract breaking. The people look at their wooden tokens, then at the closed doors, then at the armoured guards standing nervously on the perimeter. The riot does not start with a roar. It starts with a wail. A woman drops to her knees, tearing at her hair, screaming for her children. Then a stone is thrown, striking a soldier's shield. Then another. The crowd surges forward. It is a riot of the belly, a desperate, unthinking wave of humanity crashing against the state. But they are weak. They are already half-starved. The guards, well-fed and armoured in chainmail and iron, hold the line. They beat back the mob with the shafts of their spears, the wood striking hollow against shoulders and heads. They do not want to kill, but they are forced to deny. You watch from a high balcony, safe behind the stone balustrade. You see the violence, but it is the weakness of it that chills you. There is no revolutionary fervour here. There is no political slogan. There is only the exhausted, flailing desperation of the dying. The mob breaks, scattering into the side streets, sobbing, defeated not by the soldiers, but by their own lack of strength. You return to your desk. The sounds of the city are changing. The hum of commerce is gone. The roar of the riot has faded. What is left is a low, pervasive sound of weeping that seems to rise from the very stones of the city. You open the ledger. You dip your pen. The price of bread is no longer measured in coin. It is measured in lives. The city has been cut off. The social contract is broken. And as you look at the lines of ink that represent thousands of empty bellies, you realize that the Golden City has become a prison, and the sentence for the poor is death by starvation. Constantinople, winter, 537 AD. Time has lost its shape. You sit in your private study in the palace, the heavy oak door barred against the draught. The water clock in the corner marks the hour with a steady, maddening rhythm. Drip, 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 insisting that it is high noon. But your eyes tell you a different lie. Outside your window, the world is submerged in a murky, suffocating twilight. It has been 18 months. 18 months since the sun turned its face away. You pick up your stylus. The metal tip moves across the wax tablet, recording the history of a war in Italy that feels as distant as the moon. But your attention keeps drifting to the small clay oil lamp sitting on your desk. The flame sputters, consuming the olive oil with a greedy hunger. You stare at it with a strange mix of gratitude and resentment. In the old world, the world before the fog, lighting a lamp at midday was the act of a madman or a spendthrift. Now, it is a necessity of survival. The price of oil has risen alongside the price of bread, making light itself a luxury. You are burning money just to see your own hands. You stand and walk to the balcony, wrapping your heavy woolen cloak tight against the pervasive damp. The dry fog is not a mist that burns off by mid-morning. It is a ceiling. It hangs low and heavy, a bruised, purple-grey layer across the heavens that refuses to heal. It has stolen the horizon. It has stolen the colour from the Bosphorus, and most terrifying of all, it has stolen the shadows. You look down at your own feet. On the marble floor, there is no sharp, dark definition of your form. There is only a vague, blurry smear of grey. A world without shadows is a world without depth. Everything looks flat, two-dimensional, as if the city has been painted onto a canvas that is slowly fading. The great columns of the palace, usually defined by the sharp play of light and dark, now look like flat strips of paper. It is a sensation of profound disorientation, a constant visual whisper that the world is not real. This permanent gloom has done something terrible to the soul of the city. Constantinople was once a creature of noise and light, shouting merchants, clattering chariots, the flash of gold. Now, a heavy wet blanket of melancholia has suffocated it. The people move through the streets like sleepwalkers. They do not speak, they mutter. The fear has evolved from the sharp panic of the bread riots into a dull, chronic ache. They no longer look up at the sky. They are afraid of what they will not see. You decide to walk to the Hagia Sophia, the emperor's great church, which is still rising from the scaffoldings. The vast construction site, usually ringing with the sound of hammers and chisels, is subdued. The workmen move slowly, their breath pluming in the damp air. In this light, they are not building a church. They look as if they are building a tomb. Inside the sanctuary, the air is thick with the smell of beeswax and desperation. The church is full, but it is silent. People are not praying for victory or wealth. They are prostrate on the cold stone, begging for forgiveness. They believe, with a terrifying certainty, that this is the end. The sun has not just dimmed. God has blown out the candle. You return to your desk, the cold seeping through your layers of wool. You feel a profound lethargy in your limbs, a heaviness in your chest. It is the lack of light. It enters the eyes and darkens the spirit. You look at the flame of your lamp again. It is a tiny, fragile island of yellow in a sea of grey. You realize that the memory of the hot, golden sun, the sun that burned your shoulders in the hippodrome, is beginning to fade, becoming like a dream you had as a child. You dip your pen, trying to describe the year. The core conflict is no longer about food or politics. It is a battle for the mind. You are fighting to remember what a normal world looks like, while the fog outside whispers that this grey, shadowless purgatory is all there is, and all there ever will be. Constantinople, 540 AD. 4 years. It has been 4 years since the sky first turned to stone. You walk down the marble steps of the great palace, into a city that feels like it is waking from a long, feverish coma. The terrifying dry fog that swallowed the sun in 536 has finally gradually dissipated. The sky above the Golden Horn is blue again, a true, piercing Roman blue. The sun, though it feels weaker than the furnace heat of your memories, casts actual, sharp shadows on the pavement for the first time in 48 months. To a stranger arriving today, the world might look restored. But you are Procopius. You see what the sun reveals. The darkness has lifted from the sky only to settle into the marrow of the people. You walk through the Forum of Theodosius. In the days before the fog, this square was a place of muscular energy, a riot of noise, where broad-shouldered porters carried amphorae of wine like they were feathers, and soldiers marched with the thick, healthy limbs of men fed on Egyptian grain. Now, the Forum looks like a city populated by the elderly, though many of the faces you see belong to the young. The famine has evolved. It is no longer the sharp, screaming panic of the empty grain ships you witnessed at the docks. It has calcified into a chronic, wasting condition. The people of Constantinople have survived on half rations, on bread made from rotting barley mixed with lentils and sawdust, for 4 years. You observe them with the clinical eye of a historian recording the decline of a species. The citizens move with a terrifying fragility. Their skin is translucent, stretched tight over the sharp architecture of their bones, like parchment over a lantern. You can count the ribs of the street urchins through their rags. Their hair, once thick and dark, is thin and brittle, falling out in patches to reveal scabs of malnutrition. When they speak, their voices are reedy and breathless, as if the simple act of pushing air through the larynx requires a caloric energy they do not possess. You stop at a public fountain. A man is trying to lift a clay water jar. He is young, perhaps 20, but his arms tremble violently under the weight. The muscles in his forearms are gone, consumed by his own starving body. The jar slips from his shaking fingers. Smash! The sound of breaking pottery is startlingly loud in the quiet street. The man does not curse. He does not cry out. He simply stares at the broken shards and the wasted water with a dull, vacant apathy. He does not have the strength for anger. He turns and walks away, his gait shuffling and uneven. This is the legacy of the long winter. The body, deprived of fuel, has turned upon itself. It has burned through its fat, then its muscle, and now it is gnawing on its own vitality. But the damage is deeper than just thin limbs. The city has become filthy. In the Golden Age, Constantinople was a city of water and hygiene. The great baths of Zeuxippus were the pride of the empire, vast halls of steam and marble fueled by wood fires that heated water for thousands. Now, the baths are cold, silent. Every scrap of firewood in the empire has been burned for survival in the freezing winters of the Dust Vale. The furnaces are dead. The people, too weak to haul water and too cold to bathe in the unheated cisterns, have stopped washing. The stench in the streets is a physical weight. It is a thick, cloying miasma of unwashed bodies, of rotting refuse that the weakened sanitation workers can no longer clear away, of stagnant drains clogged with the debris of the lean years. It hangs in the alleyways, heavy and sweet-sour. As you walk near the grain warehouses which are finally, slowly beginning to fill again, you notice a movement in the shadows. A quick, dark flash of fur. Rats. They are everywhere now. In the years of plenty, the city's cats and dogs kept them in check, but the cats and dogs disappeared 3 years ago, eaten by the starving populace. Now, the black rats breed without predators. They scurry boldly across the cobblestones in broad daylight, their small, dark bodies sleek and healthy compared to the humans they live among. They dart between the feet of the beggars, unafraid. You watch a large rat pause in the middle of the street, sniffing the air, its whiskers twitching. A man sitting on a nearby step watches it too. He makes no move to shoo it away. He simply watches it with a glazed, indifferent stare. The balance of power in the city has shifted. You return to your study in the palace, your heart heavy. You look down at the people passing below your window, tiny figures moving through the great stone canyons of the capital. You realize that the empire has not survived the crisis. It has merely lingered. The population of Constantinople is a standing army of the vulnerable. Their immune systems, The invisible shields that protect the blood have been shattered by years of malnutrition and cold. A common cold now kills a grown man. A scratch turns into a gangrenous wound. A fever that would have burned off in a day now lingers for weeks. They are a tinderbox, dry and brittle, waiting for a spark. You dip your pen to write, recording the recovery of the sun. But you feel a deep, instinctual dread coiling in your stomach. You look at the rats moving in the courtyard and at the skeletal people moving in the street. The city is open. Its biological defenses are down. The walls of Theodosius can stop an army of Vandals or Persians, but the city has no defense against what is coming next. The sun has returned, yes, but it shines on a population that is defenseless. The famine has done the work of the sappers who dig beneath a fortress wall, hollowing out the foundation, leaving the structure standing but hollow. Now, all it will take is a single ship, a single passenger, to bring the whole world crashing down. The Golden Horn, Autumn, 541 AD. The sun has returned to the sky, and with it, the rhythm of the world has finally begun to beat again. You stand on the limestone quays of the Golden Horn, the same spot where you watched the empty, bobbing ghost fleet arrive in the years of the fog. But today, the water tells a different story. The ship approaching the dock is not dancing lightly on the waves. It is a heavy, lumbering beast, its hull painted with the blue eye of protection, sitting so low in the water that the swells wash over its gunwales. It is the Isis, a massive grain freighter out of Pelusium, the great port city on the eastern edge of the Nile Delta. The air around you vibrates with a sound you have not heard in nearly half a decade, the roar of genuine, unbridled hope. The dockworkers, men who have grown lean and hard during the famine years, are shouting commands that sound like songs. The great wooden cranes creak into position. The city, starved and hollowed out by the long winter of the dust veil, is ready to eat. You open your ledger. Your hand shakes slightly, not from the cold, the air is warm and thick, but from relief. You are about to record a surplus. The Nile has finally risen. The earth has healed. The shipment entering the harbour today represents life for tens of thousands of people. It means the return of the full Anona, the end of the riots, the restoration of imperial order. Thud. The ship bumps against the stone wharf. Heavy ropes, thick as a man's arm, are thrown and caught by calloused hands. The gangplanks thunder down onto the quay. Immediately, the army of stevedores surges forward. They march in a rhythmic line, disappearing into the dark, musty hold of the ship and reappearing with heavy burlap sacks of Egyptian wheat on their shoulders. The air fills with the golden haze of grain dust, a scent that smells like baking bread, like sunlight, like salvation. You watch the flour spill from a torn sack, gathering in a small, golden pile on the wet stones. A moment later, a child runs out from the crowd and scoops it up, laughing. But you are Procopius. You are trained to see what others ignore. You watch the flow of goods, the movement of the crowd, and then your eye catches a different kind of movement. It happens in the shadows, underneath the gangplanks, where the ship's mooring lines stretch taut to the iron rings of the dock. A dark shape detaches itself from the hull. It scuttles along the rope with a fluid, practiced balance, moving from the ship to the shore. Then another, and another. Black rats. They are sleek, energetic creatures, far healthier than the mangy, starving specimens that have plagued Constantinople's streets for the last few years. These are Egyptian rats, fattened on the grain in the hold, passengers who have enjoyed a comfortable, dark voyage across the Mediterranean. They move with a bold, frantic energy, driven by the instinct to explore new territory. They drop onto the cobblestones of the quay and instantly vanish into the labyrinth of crates, warehouses, and sewers that line the harbour. You watch them go with a flicker of mild disgust, but no real alarm. Rats are a part of life. They are the shadow of the grain trade. Where there is wheat, there are rats. It is the tax nature levies on abundance. You turn your attention back to the sacks, to the counting, to the joyful noise of a city being fed. You do not see what the rats carry. You cannot see the microscopic hitchhikers buried deep in their dark fur. You cannot see the fleas, and you certainly cannot see the deadly, ancient bacteria, Yersinia pestis, swimming in the gut of the fleas, multiplying, blocking their digestive tracts, driving the insects into a feeding frenzy. These rats are not just scavengers, they are biological weapons. They are the vanguard of an invasion force far more lethal than any Vandal or Persian army. While you count the bushels of wheat that will save the city, the rats are spreading out. They are scurrying into the grain warehouses, mingling with the local rat population, passing on their lethal cargo. They are climbing into the walls of the bakeries. They are finding their way into the cellars of the poor and the pantries of the rich. The ship from Pelusium has delivered 2 cargoes today. One is the golden grain that will fill the bellies of the people. The other is a silent, invisible fire that will burn them from the inside out. The unloading continues until sunset. The warehouses are full. The emperor will be pleased. The price of bread will drop tomorrow. The crisis, everyone believes, is finally over. You close your ledger and walk back up the hill toward the palace. The city feels lighter, the air sweeter. You pass a group of children playing near the forum, their laughter echoing off the marble walls. A stray black rat darts across the street, disappearing into a drain near their feet. You do not break stride. You do not know that you have just witnessed the signing of the city's death warrant. You believe you have recorded the day of salvation. In reality, you have just documented the arrival of the apocalypse. Constantinople, spring, 542 AD. The winter has retreated, and for the first time in years, the spring feels like a promise kept. The air drifting through the open windows of the great palace is soft, carrying the scent of thawing earth and the salt spray of the Bosphorus. The grain from the Isis and the Alexandrian fleet has done its work. The bakeries are warm with the smell of yeast. The riots have ceased, and the city of Constantinople, though scarred and skeletal, has begun to breathe again. You sit in your study, the morning light falling across your desk in a clean, golden bar. You are organizing the imperial archives, cataloguing the victories of the Vandal wars. The crisis of the famine feels like a closing chapter, a dark nightmare that is finally dissolving in the morning sun. The year of the sun has returned. But then, the whispers begin. They do not start in the Senate or the basilicas. They start, as all true things do, in the mud of the harbour districts, down by the Golden Horn, where the grain ships docked 6 months ago. At first, the reports are so fragmented and bizarre that you dismiss them as the ravings of a population driven half-mad by years of starvation and darkness. The reports are not medical, they are supernatural. The prefect of the city sends a dispatch to the emperor, which lands on your desk. It speaks of a disturbance of the mind spreading among the dockworkers and the poor who live in the cramped, damp tenements near the water's edge. People are claiming to see demons. You read the accounts with the skeptic's eye of a historian. The stories are remarkably consistent. Men claim to see spectres in human shape walking toward them in the twilight. Others claim that while they sleep, dark figures stand over their beds, striking them with invisible swords or spears. You shake your head, dipping your pen in ink. Hysteria, you write in the margin. The dry fog may have lifted from the sky, you reason, but it has not yet lifted from the minds of the people. The trauma of the famine has left them brittle, superstitious, and prone to waking nightmares. But the rumours do not stop. They climb the hill, moving from the port into the artisan districts, seeping into the copper markets and the silk weavers' quarters. And the stories change. They become less like ghost stories and more like police reports. A man sees a dark shape. He feels a sudden, violent blow, and then he collapses. You decide to see for yourself. You are Procopius. You do not trust reports, you trust your eyes. You leave the insulated safety of the palace, shedding your official robes for a simple cloak, and walk down toward the Strategion, the great market square near the harbour. The day is warm, almost humid. The city smells of wet stone, fish, and the returning hustle of life. But as you descend, The atmosphere shifts. The noise of the market is brittle, high-pitched. You stop at a wine shop to listen. The mood is terrified. The men are not talking about the chariot races or the price of wheat. They are talking about the ghosts. "My brother," a man whispers, his hands shaking so badly he spills his wine. "He was walking home. He stopped in the street. He screamed at the air, begging a man I could not see to spare him. He said the demon hit him on the shoulder. Now he is burning up. He does not know my name." You walk out into the square. It is crowded, but there is a tension in the movement of the bodies, a collective flinch, and then you see it happen. A porter, a strong man carrying a heavy load of timber on his shoulder, suddenly freezes in the middle of the street. He drops the wood with a deafening clatter. He stumbles back, his eyes wide, fixed on a patch of empty air just a few feet in front of him. "Get back!" he screams, his voice high and terrified, shattering the hum of the market. "Get back, devil!" He raises his hands to protect his face from an attacker that only he can see. He flinches violently, his head snapping back as if struck by a heavy, invisible blow. He falls to the cobblestones, writhing, shouting at the empty sky. The crowd backs away in a wave, making the sign of the cross. "A demon," they whisper, turning their faces away. "He has been touched." You step closer, your curiosity overriding your caution. You look at the man on the ground. He is not fighting a spirit. He is fighting his own body. His face is flushed a deep, unnatural, violet red. His eyes are bloodshot, rolling in his head. He is already delirious. This is not a haunting. It is a symptom. You realize, with a cold, clinical dread, that the demons are not external. They are internal. The disease, whatever it is striking the brain first. It is attacking the nervous system with such ferocious speed and violence that the victim's mind shatters before their body even has time to manifest a fever. The blow they feel is the sudden, catastrophic onset of the infection firing through their neurons. You watch as the man is dragged away by his terrified friends. His skin is burning to the touch. He is muttering now, a string of nonsense words, his mind already gone. You begin to walk back up the hill, your pace quickening. You notice things you missed before. A woman sitting in a doorway, laughing uncontrollably at nothing. A child shivering violently in the warm sun, staring at the sky with a look of absolute terror. The city is not haunted by ghosts. It is being infiltrated by a sickness that wears the mask of madness. You return to the palace, the cool marble halls feeling like a sanctuary that has suddenly become fragile. You find Alexander, the court physician, in the library. He looks exhausted, surrounded by scrolls of Galen and Hippocrates, his face pale in the lamplight. "The madness," you say, breathless. "Down at the port. What is it?" Alexander looks up. His eyes are hollow. "It is not just madness, Procopius. That is only the herald. The hallucination comes first. The fever follows within the hour. And then," he hesitates, swallowing hard. "Then comes the swelling. But not like anything I have seen in the texts. It is new. It is black. And it is everywhere." You look out the window at the Golden Horn, where the ships from Egypt are anchored, their masts swaying gently. The sun is shining, the water is blue, but the sense of normalcy you felt this morning has evaporated like mist. The city is not recovering. It is incubating. The rats you saw months ago, scuttling down the ropes of the grain ships, have done their work in the dark. They have sown a field of death in the cellars and the walls of the capital, and now the harvest has begun. The mystery illness is not a superstition. It is the first confusing stroke of a biological hammer that is about to crush the world. You close your eyes, and for a moment, in the safety of your study, you imagine you can hear the sound of invisible swords being drawn all over the city. Constantinople, late spring, 542 AD. You realize now that the madness was a mercy. The hallucinations, the screaming at invisible demons, the terrified flight from phantom swords that was simply the mind shattering under the initial lightning strike assault of the infection. It was a curtain of terror, that obscured what was happening to the flesh. Now, the curtain has been torn away. The manic delirium has subsided into a deep, comatose lethargy, and the body has begun to reveal the true, grotesque shape of the enemy. You are summoned to the house of Eugenius, a young, bright scribe in your own department. He is a man who sat at a desk across from you just yesterday, complaining of a slight headache and the heat. Today, his wife's message says he is dying. You enter his home in the second region of the city. The air inside is stiflingly hot, the windows shuttered tight against the bright spring sun, but it is the smell that arrests you the moment you cross the threshold. It is not the sour, vinegary smell of a sick room you are used to. It is a heavy, sweet, metallic scent, cloying and thick. It smells like old blood mixed with rotting fruit. Alexander, the physician, is already there. He stands by the bed, his face a mask of grim, impotent fascination, holding a cloth pressed tightly over his mouth and nose. "Look," Alexander whispers, pulling back the linen sheet that covers the young man. Eugenius is naked, his body glistening with a cold, oily sweat. He is unconscious, his breathing a shallow, rattling gasp that shakes his ribcage. But your eyes are drawn instantly to the deformity that has erupted on his body. In the crease of his groin, there is a swelling. It is neither a boil nor a tumour. It is a hard, angry knot of flesh, the size of a man's fist, protruding violently from the smooth skin. It is a deep, bruised purple, darkening to black at the centre, as if a dark stone has been forced under the skin. "The boubon," Alexander says, using the Greek word for the groin, the word that will give this horror its name, the swelling. He points to another, smaller lump rising in the young man's armpit, and a third, just beginning to distend the skin behind his ear. "The body is fighting," the physician explains, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and scientific awe. "The humours are boiling. The poison is gathering in the glands, trying to burst out." He reaches out and gently touches the swelling in the groin. Even in the depths of his coma, Eugenius flinches violently, a low moan of pure, white-hot agony escaping his cracked lips. The pain is absolute. It is a pressure so intense, it feels as if the bones themselves are being crushed from within. Then, you witness the progression. As you watch, the skin around the black swelling seems to darken further, violet tendrils spreading like spilled ink. The infection is racing through his blood. Dark, gangrenous patches tokens, the common people are already calling them, are blooming on his thighs and chest. It is the tissue dying while the man is still alive. The body is rotting from the inside out. "I tried to lance it," Alexander confesses, gesturing to a bowl of bloody water on the floor. "I thought if I could drain the poison, but there is no pus. There is only black blood and dead flesh. It is not an abscess. It is a necrosis." You stare at your friend. Yesterday, he was laughing. He was worrying about the price of ink. Today, he is a ruin. The speed of the transformation is terrifying. This is not a disease that negotiates or lingers. It is an executioner. You stay for an hour, unable to look away. You watch as the fever spikes, turning Eugenius's skin radiant with heat. He begins to thrash, muttering names of people long dead, and then, quite suddenly, the thrashing stops. The rattling breath ceases. The tension leaves his body, and he is gone. From the onset of the headache to the final silence, it has been less than 24 hours. You walk out of the house, your legs feeling heavy and numb. You step back into the street, desperate for clean air and sunlight, but the street offers no relief. You look at the people passing by, and now that you know what to look for, you see it everywhere. You see a merchant walking with a strange, wide-legged gait, wincing with every step, trying to keep his thighs from touching the agony in his groin. You see a woman clutching her arm to her side, protecting the swelling in her armpit. You see a beggar slumped against a wall, his head lolling to the side, revealing the dark, telltale lump behind his ear. The screaming madness of the demons has been replaced by this undeniable physical reality. The city is swelling. The lymphatic system of Constantinople, the very filtration system of human life, has been overwhelmed. You realize, with a jolt of cold historical dread, that the famine was merely the preparation. The hunger cleared the field. It weakened the walls of the body, and now the enemy has poured through the breach. You hurry back toward the palace, pulling your cloak tight, trying not to touch anyone, trying not to breathe too deeply. The image of the black swelling, that hard stone of death, is burned into your mind. It is a mark, a brand. You know that inside the walls of the Golden City, thousands of people are currently discovering that same mark on their own bodies. The buboes have bloomed, and the season of death has officially begun. Constantinople, summer, 542 AD. The death of Eugenius was not an isolated tragedy. It was a signal fire. Within days, the spark that ignited in the harbour districts has jumped the firebreaks of the city's social order. The pestilence is no longer confined to the damp, rat-infested tenements of the poor. It is climbing the 7 hills of Constantinople. It is slipping through the marble porticos of the wealthy. It is entering the monasteries and the barracks. You sit in the central bureau of the prefecture, the administrative heart of the city. The room is usually a hive of scribes and messengers, the air thick with the noise of tax collection and law. Today, it is quiet. Half the desks are empty. The men who sat there yesterday are not coming back. You look at the tally sheets delivered by the decani, the officials responsible for burials. In the first week, they reported a few hundred deaths a day, a grim number, but manageable in a city of 500,000. But today, the number has changed. The curve of the graph has turned vertical. 5,000. 5,000 deaths today. You stare at the ink, waiting for it to make sense. It is a number that defies comprehension. It is the population of a large town, erased between sunrise and sunset. You leave your desk. You need to see the city. You need to understand the geography of this destruction. You walk out into the Mese, the grand central avenue. Just a month ago, this street was the artery of the world, clogged with carts, merchants, and soldiers. Now, it is a canyon of silence. The shops are shuttered. The market stalls are empty. The only movement is the wind kicking up dust devils on the paving stones. But the silence is a lie. As you walk, you begin to hear the true sound of the city. It is not the roar of commerce, but a low, pervasive, and constant keen of mourning. From behind the barred windows of the insulae, from the courtyards of the villas, comes the sound of weeping. It is a collective sound, a single, city-wide note of grief that rises into the hot, stagnant air. You pass a bakery. The door is open. Inside, you see the baker slumped over his kneading trough, his face resting in the flour. He is dead. The dough in the trough has risen and spilled over the sides, a grotesque abundance in a house of death. The disease is moving with terrifying speed. You realize now the mechanism of the explosion. The rats, the original carriers, are dying too. You see their small, dark bodies littering the gutters, and as the hosts die, the fleas, the invisible, desperate passengers, are jumping. They are leaping from the cold fur of the dead rats onto the warm flesh of the living humans. They bite the beggar. They bite the merchant. They bite the priest. You watch a procession of the healthy, if such a word still applies. A group of monks is hurrying down the street, carrying a holy icon, chanting Kyrie eleison. They are praying for deliverance, but as they walk, one of the monks stumbles. He drops to his knees. He tries to stand, but his legs buckle. He begins to vomit black blood. The others do not stop to help him. They scatter, their chant breaking into terrified cries. The icon is left lying in the dirt. The social contract is dissolving. Fear has replaced duty. You reach the Forum of Constantine. In the center stands the great porphyry column of the founder. Around its base, usually a place of political debate, bodies are beginning to accumulate. People are dying faster than they can be buried. You see a cart rattling over the stones. It is not a hearse. It is a simple vegetable cart. It is piled high with corpses, men, women, children, their limbs tangled together in a final, undignified embrace. The driver, a man with a cloth tied over his face, does not look at you. He is numb. He is no longer a man. He is a machine for moving meat. He stops to pick up a body lying on the steps of a church. As he lifts the corpse, you see the marks. The black, swollen buboes under the arms, on the neck, in the groin. They look like dark stones that have been forced under the skin. The body is already turning black, the necrosis spreading like ink in water. You realize the sheer, overwhelming scale of the catastrophe. This is not a wave that will break and recede. It is a rising tide. The bureaucracy you serve, the lists you keep, the laws you write, they are all meaningless against this biological storm. You hurry back to the palace, the sound of the cart's wheels grinding on the stone echoing in your ears. Clack, clack, clack. It is the new heartbeat of the city. You return to your office and pick up your pen. You must record this. You must write down the number, even if your hand shakes. 10,000. The reports are coming in from the afternoon shift. The death toll has doubled since this morning. 10,000 people will die today. And tomorrow? You look out the window at the Golden City. It glitters in the sunlight, beautiful and white. But it is a deception. The city is a corpse, still warm, but the heart has stopped beating. The explosion has happened. The shockwave is spreading. And you know, with a cold, terrifying certainty, that the systems of man, the graves, the rights, the government itself, are about to shatter under the weight of the dead. Constantinople. Summer. 542 AD. The explosion of the plague has not just filled the graveyards, it has emptied the city of its soul. You walk through the Chalk, the monumental bronze vestibule of the Great Palace. For centuries, this hall has been the nerve center of the empire, a place echoing with the footsteps of senators, the shouting of petitioners, and the snap of military commands. It is the machine that runs the world. Today, the machine has stopped. The silence is profound, amplified by the vastness of the architecture. You pass the desks of the scrinia, the imperial bureaus. They are abandoned. Rolls of parchment sit unfurled, collecting dust. Inkwells have dried out. The scribes, the accountants, the lawyers, the invisible army that keeps the Roman state alive are gone. They are either dead in their homes or hiding behind barred doors, terrified to breathe the same air as their neighbors. You realize then that the empire is not marble and gold. It is people. And when the people vanish, the empire evaporates. You venture out to the city gates. The Theodosian walls are the greatest defensive fortifications ever built, designed to repel armies of Huns and Goths. But you find the gatehouse unguarded. The sentries are missing. The great iron-bound doors stand half open, creaking in the hot wind. A barbarian army could walk right into the city, but there are no armies marching. The world outside is just as dead as the world within. The breakdown of order is not a riot. It is a cessation. It is the stopping of a clock. You walk through the artisan districts. The sound of the hammer and the loom has been replaced by the buzzing of flies. The bakeries, which you watched with such anxiety during the famine, are dark. The ovens are cold. The flour sits in sacks, untouched, while the baker lies dead on the floor. Money has lost its voice. You see a gold solidus lying in the gutter, dropped by a fleeing hand. No one stoops to pick it up. In a city where there is nothing to buy and no one to sell it, gold is just heavy metal. But the most terrifying collapse is not economic. It is spiritual. You enter the Church of the Holy Apostles, the resting place of emperors. You expect to find priests chanting, swinging censers of incense to ward off the miasma. Instead, you find chaos. The rights of the dead, the most sacred duty of the Roman citizen, have been abandoned. In the Golden Age, a funeral was a procession. There were mourners, hymns, a dignified interment. Now, the dead are dragged out of their houses like refuse. The Decani, the guild of gravediggers, have all died or fled. You watch a man drag the body of his wife down the church steps. He is weeping, exhausted. He leaves her there, on the mosaic floor of the narthex, alongside a dozen others. He does not have the strength to dig a grave. He does not have a priest to say the final words. He simply leaves her in the house of God and walks away, a broken figure. The church is no longer a sanctuary. It is a waiting room for the grave. You step back out into the blinding sunlight. The city is a ship that has lost its crew. The sails are tattered, the wheel is spinning freely, and the vessel is drifting aimlessly. The laws you wrote, the taxes you collected, the wars you chronicled, they all relied on the assumption that tomorrow would be like today. But that assumption is gone. The social contract, the invisible web of duty and expectation that binds a civilization together, has dissolved. You return to the palace, your footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. You feel a cold, creeping realization. The plague has not just attacked the bodies of the citizens, it has attacked the mind of the state. The city is not being governed. It is not being protected. It is merely existing, a stone skeleton waiting for the end. And you wonder, as you look toward the imperial chambers, if the city has stopped, does the emperor still rule? Constantinople, late summer, 542 AD. The plague does not knock. It does not pause at the bronze gates of the Chalk to present its credentials, nor does it cower before the solentaries guarding the sacred halls of the Daphne Palace. It simply walks in, carried on the stagnant air, rustling in the silk robes of a servant, or pulsing in the gut of a flea hidden in a rug. You stand in the antechamber of the imperial bedroom. The silence here is profound, a heavy, suffocating blanket that feels entirely different from the chaotic, screaming silence of the streets below. This is the silence of a held breath, of a heart that has skipped a beat. The usual swarm of whispering eunuchs, ambitious ministers, and hurried generals has evaporated. The corridors are empty, save for the excubitors, the imperial guards who stand like marble statues, their knuckles white on their spear shafts. They are terrified. They are trained to fight men with swords, not an invisible enemy that turns the air itself into poison. The heavy doors to the inner sanctum groan open. You are beckoned inside, not to consult on ancient laws or the history of wars, but to bear witness to the impossible. The room is a cavern of purple silk and gold leaf, oppressive and dim. The air is thick, cloying with the smoke of expensive frankincense burned in a desperate attempt to mask the underlying metallic odor of sickness. In the center, on a bed of ivory and gold, lies Justinian, the master of the Roman world. He is unrecognizable. The man who rewrote the laws of Rome, the demon emperor who supposedly never sleeps, is now utterly, helplessly still. His skin burns with a fever that seems to radiate across the room, flushing his face a dark, unnatural violet. His breath comes in shallow, rattling gasps that shake his entire frame. You step closer, your heart hammering a frantic rhythm against your ribs. You see the mark. On the inside of the imperial thigh, pushing against the delicate, sweat-soaked linen of his nightshirt, is a swelling, a bubo. It is the same black, angry knot of flesh you saw on the porter in the market, on the dead baker, on the corpses piled like cordwood in the streets. The plague has touched the body of God's vice-regent on earth. It has reduced the emperor to meat. Justinian's eyes flutter open, but they are glazed, seeing nothing. He is lost in the labyrinth of delirium. He mutters names of dead men, shouts commands to armies that have long since disbanded, and whispers to ghosts only he can see. The brilliant, tireless mind that holds the empire together has shattered into fever dreams. A cold, paralyzing realization washes over you. The empire is headless. The grain shipments, the complex tax codes, the war in Italy, everything relies on the will of this one feverish man. If he dies tonight, the civil war that follows will finish what the plague began. The wolves are already circling. You can feel their ambition in the empty corridors. But the room is not entirely leaderless. From the shadows of the bed curtains, a figure steps forward. It is Theodora. The empress does not weep. She does not pray. She stands like a pillar of obsidian, her face a mask of terrifying, icy calm. While the ministers cower in their estates and the generals plot in their camps, She has become the state. She looks at you, her dark eyes sharp and clear, cutting through the haze of incense. She knows the danger. It is not just the disease, it is the vacuum. If the city knows the emperor is in a coma, the mob will rise, and the usurpation will begin before the sun sets. The emperor sleeps, she says, her voice low, steady, and lethal, a command that brooks no argument. He is resting. The business of the empire continues. She begins to issue orders with the precision of a general. The palace is to be sealed. No one enters, no one leaves. The generals, including your own master Belisarius, are to be watched. Any talk of succession is treason, punishable by immediate execution. She is placing an iron band around the fracturing empire, holding it together by the sheer force of her will. You back out of the room, bowing not to the dying man on the bed, but to the woman standing over him. You walk back to your quarters through the empty, echoing halls, the sound of your own footsteps seemingly too loud. The contrast is dizzying. Outside the walls, the city is a graveyard, abandoned to chaos and rot. Inside, in the purple chamber, a feverish man battles a microscopic enemy, while a woman battles the collapse of history. You realize that the line between order and anarchy is not a stone wall or a legion of soldiers. It is the heartbeat of a single man and the iron nerve of his wife. Psyche Galata, late summer, 542 AD. The earth is full. For 1,000 years, the people of Constantinople have buried their dead with reverence, laying them to rest beneath the cypress trees outside the city walls. But the cold mathematics of the plague has finally defeated the geography of the city. The cemeteries are overflowing. The vast trenches dug by the imperial guard pits meant to hold thousands are filled to the brim, the soil mounded high and uneven over the tangled limbs. The city is choking on its own mortality. The dead are piling up in the streets, in the porticos, in the narthexes of churches, rotting in the summer heat. They have become a physical poison, a miasma that threatens to kill the few who remain. From the sealed palace, where the Empress Theodora rules with an iron will, a desperate, horrifying order is issued. It is a command that violates every sacred Roman law regarding the sanctity of the dead. You are sent to witness its execution. You cross the Golden Horn on a small skiff. The water is grey, heavy, and still. As you approach the northern shore, the district of Psyche, you see the great Theodosian walls rising from the water's edge. They are formidable fortifications, studded with square stone towers, designed to hold archers and ballistae to defend the city. But today, the towers look wrong. As your boat grinds onto the shingle, you wrap a thick cloth soaked in vinegar around your face. It is a futile shield. The smell hits you instantly, a physical wall of putrefaction so thick, sweet, and sour that it makes your eyes water and your stomach heave. You look up. The roofs of the towers have been torn off. There are no sentries on the battlements. Instead, there are men stripped to the waist, their bodies glistening with sweat and grease. They are hauling bodies up the narrow, winding stone stairs. They are not carrying them on biers with incense and prayers. They are dragging them by the ankles, slinging them over shoulders like sacks of wet grain. You watch as a worker reaches the top of the tower wall. He hefts the corpse of a man, perhaps a father, a soldier, a priest, and simply tips him over the edge. Thud. The body disappears into the dark, hollow stone shaft of the tower. This is the Emperor's solution. The towers, built to defend the city from barbarians, have become silos for the dead. Driven by the historian's grim duty to record the truth, you climb the stairs of the nearest tower. The stone is slick under your sandals. You reach the parapet and look down. The sight is a vision of hell that no artist could paint. The tower is nearly full. It is a chaotic, tangled mass of humanity, limbs twisted in unnatural angles, faces frozen in the rictus of their final agony. There is no dignity here. There is only volume. But the true horror is not just in the sight. It is in the method. As the towers fill to the brim, the bodies do not settle enough to make room for the next cartload. You watch, your hand gripping the rough stone of the battlement, as the workers climb into the tower. They walk upon the dead. They jump. They stomp. They use heavy wooden poles to press the corpses down, crushing bone and flesh to create more space, packing the dead tight like grapes in a winepress. The sound, the wet, crunching squelch of pressure applied to decaying matter, is a sound that will echo in your nightmares until the day you die. You look down at the base of the tower. Through the cracks in the mortar, a dark, foul liquid has begun to seep out, trickling down the ancient limestone like black tears. You retreat, stumbling back down the stairs, your mind reeling. You have seen the absolute nadir of your civilization. The Roman Empire, which prides itself on order, law, and the rights of the citizen, has been reduced to this, treating its people as refused to be compacted into stone jars. You return to the city proper, desperate to put the water between you and the towers, but nature has one final cruelty in store. That evening, the wind changes. The breeze, usually a refreshing comfort from the north, blows directly over the open-roofed towers of Sycee. It picks up the concentrated, putrid effluvium of 10,000 rotting bodies and carries it across the Golden Horn. The smell descends on Constantinople. It is not just a scent, it is a fog. It penetrates every window, every crack in the plaster. It wakes sleepers in their beds, gagging. It invades the palace, overpowering the frankincense in the emperor's sick room. You stand on your balcony, unable to escape the cloying, suffocating stench. It is the smell of the Tower of Corpses, a physical reminder that the dead have not gone away. They are still here, hovering over the city, pressing down on the lungs of the living. The core conflict is resolved in the most horrific way possible. The desperate need to dispose of the dead has succeeded, but in doing so, it has turned the very air of the city into a poison. Constantinople, late summer, 542 AD. For days, the heat has been a physical weight, a stagnant, humid blanket pressing down on the Golden Horn. The air in the city is paralyzed, holding the dust, the flies, and the silence in a suffocating suspension. You stand on the balcony of your quarters in the great palace, your linen tunic clinging to your skin, praying for the relief of the evening breeze. As the sun begins to bleed into the western horizon, casting a bruised purple light over the domes of the churches, the weather finally breaks. But it is not a relief, it is a betrayal. For centuries, the north wind, the Boreas, has been the city's salvation, sweeping down from the Black Sea to scrub the streets clean with cool, salt-laden air. But tonight, the breeze shifts. It turns traitor. It begins to blow from the northeast, rolling directly across the water from the district of Sycee. It blows directly over the open roofs of the guard towers you visited yesterday. You watch the water of the Golden Horn. You see the ripples first, a dark, advancing line of disturbed water moving toward the sea walls. Then, the air hits you. It is not a scent, it is a physical invasion. It is a thick, cloying, and unspeakably sweet odor. It tastes of copper, of old blood, and of overripe fruit left to rot in the sun. It is a heavy, oily miasma that coats the back of your throat like grease and clings to the lining of your lungs. It is the concentrated essence of 10,000 decaying bodies, fermented in the stone silos of the towers and delivered by the wind to the living. You recoil, stumbling back into your room, your hands fumbling frantically with the heavy wooden shutters. You slam them tight. Bang! You throw the iron latch. But the smell is not stopped by wood or stone. It is a ghost. It seeps through the cracks in the plaster. It drifts under the doorframe. It permeates the heavy velvet curtains and the silk tapestries until the fabric itself seems to exhale the stench of the grave. You soak a cloth in strong vinegar and press it tightly to your face, breathing through the wet linen until your eyes sting. It offers no relief. The smell is too dense, too complex. It is the smell of a city consuming itself. Down in the streets, the reaction is immediate and visceral. You hear it before you see it, the cascading thunder of windows slamming shut across the 7 hills, a wave of wooden claps rolling through the city. People who have ventured out to the wells drop their buckets and run, gagging, their hands clamped over their faces. The few remaining guards on the walls turn their backs to the wind, huddled in their cloaks, defeated by an enemy they cannot fight with spears. Even the great palace, the fortress of the emperor, is breached. You walk through the corridors, the vinegar cloth still pressed to your face. You see servants running with bronze braziers, burning piles of rosemary, laurel, and pine, desperate to cleanse the air. But the smoke only mixes with the rot, creating a nauseating, sweet-smelling fog. You pass the imperial bedchamber, where Justinian still lies in his fevered sleep. The air here is thick with heavy frankincense, clouds of it billowing from silver censers. But underneath the expensive perfume, the sweet, metallic rot remains. The Emperor of the Romans is breathing the death of his subjects. You realize the terrifying intimacy of this plague. You cannot separate yourself from the fate of the poor. The bodies you saw thrown into the towers in Sicca are now visiting you in the throne room. The boundaries between the living and the dead, between the clean and the unclean, have been erased by the wind. You retreat to your desk, trying to work, trying to find order in your ledgers, but you cannot concentrate. The air feels heavy, toxic. In this era, you believe that disease is carried by miasma, by bad air. And now, the air is nothing but death. Every breath feels like a small ingestion of poison. You feel a phantom tickle in your throat, a heaviness in your limbs. You wonder if the wind is seeding the plague into your own lungs, if the invisible dust of the dead is taking root inside you. The sun sets, but the wind does not die down. It continues to blow through the night, a silent, invisible river of decay flowing over the rooftops. You lie in your bed, unable to sleep, listening to the wind rattling the shutters like a thief trying to get in. The city has become a sealed tomb, trapping the living inside with the ghosts of the dead. You realize that there is no escape. You can close your doors, you can burn your incense, but you cannot stop breathing. Constantinople, autumn, 542 AD. The end begins with a fall. In the quiet of your study, the quill slips from your numb fingers, clattering against the parchment. You reach for it, and the floor rushes up to strike you. The world goes black, but not silent. You hear a shout, a servant's voice, thick with panic. Then, the rush of footsteps. You wake in your bed, but you are not resting. You are fighting. A violent heat consumes you. It feels as if your blood has been replaced with molten lead. You try to thrash, to throw off the heavy wool blankets that feel like a crushing weight, but strong hands pin you down. "Hold him," a voice commands. It is Alexander, the physician. His voice is not the calm, clinical tone of the lecture hall. It is rough, exhausted, and edged with fear. Do not let him rise. The delirium is setting in. You are not abandoned to the ghosts. You are the center of a frantic, messy battle for survival. You feel a cold, wet shock against your forehead, a sponge soaked in vinegar and snow water. It hisses against your burning skin. You try to turn your head, but a wooden spoon is forced between your cracked lips. "Drink," Alexander orders. Swallow. A bitter, thick liquid, a slurry of herbs and water chokes you. You gag, spitting it out, red wine and bile staining your tunic. They do not stop. They force more down. They are drowning the fire inside you. The pain in your groin is a living thing, a throbbing, expanding knot of agony. Through the haze, you see Alexander leaning over you, his face grey with fatigue, his eyes narrowed in concentration. He is holding a poultice, a steaming cloth packed with lentils and mustard seeds. He presses it directly onto the bubo. You scream. The heat of the poultice against the inflamed swelling is a torture beyond description. You arch your back, your muscles seizing, but the servants hold your arms and legs with the grip of iron. "It must draw out the poison," Alexander mutters, more to himself than to you. "It must ripen." Days bleed into nights. You are vaguely aware of the constant vigil. You see the physician checking your pulse, his fingers trembling. You see him lancing your arm to bleed you, the dark, sluggish blood flowing into a bronze bowl. You hear the low, rhythmic chanting of a priest in the corner, swinging a censer of myrrh to ward off the miasma. The demons come, the black armored hallucinations, but they are not alone. Alexander is there, shouting at them, shouting at you to stay, to fight. He is a barrier between you and the dark. Then comes the crisis. The swelling in your groin has become as hard and large as a stone. The pressure is unbearable. Your heart is fluttering like a trapped bird. You feel the cold steel of a knife against your skin. Alexander has made the decision. He cannot wait for it to burst. He must cut. "Hold him still!" he roars. You feel the bite of the blade. And then a sensation of tearing. A sharp, excruciating rupture, followed by a release of pressure so profound it feels like the breaking of a dam. The infection pours out. You drift away. You open your eyes. The light is grey and watery. The room is quiet, stripped of the frantic energy of the struggle. The air smells of vinegar, sweat, and old incense. You try to move. Your body feels hollow, scooped out. You turn your head. Alexander is sitting in a chair by the window. He is asleep, his chin resting on his chest, his physician's robe stained and rumpled. He looks like a man who has fought a war with his bare hands. You look down at your leg. It is bandaged with fresh, white linen. The hard knot is gone. The fever has broken, leaving you shivering in a pool of cold sweat. You are alive, not by chance and not by a miracle. You are alive because another man refused to let you die. You reach for the pitcher of water by the bed. The sound of the ceramic scraping on the table wakes Alexander. He jerks awake, his eyes wild for a second before they focus on you. He sees your clear eyes. He sees you moving. He slumps back in his chair, a long, shuddering exhale escaping his lips. He does not smile. He is too tired for that. He just nods. You stumble to the window and push open the shutters, bracing yourself for the roar of the city. But there is only silence. It is a profound, heavy silence. The wind has died. The air is still. You look out over the city. No fires, no ships moving in the harbour. The streets empty. It looks like a city of stone abandoned for 1,000 years. You have been saved. But as you look at the silent domes of Constantinople, you realise the cost. While you were fighting for your breath in this room, the city outside was losing its own battle. You are a survivor, standing in the wreckage of the Golden Age. Constantinople, 550 AD. 8 years have passed since the fires of the pestilence burned themselves down to cold ash. The city has survived, but it is a ghost of the golden metropolis you once knew. The population is half of what it was. The streets are quieter, the markets less frantic, the shouting less boisterous. The great, nervous energy of the empire has been sapped, replaced by a weary, pious endurance. You sit at your desk in a small, private room, far from the official archives of the palace. You are an older man now. The skin on your hands is thinner, spotted with age, and the scar on your thigh, where the bubo was lanced, is a constant, aching reminder of the brush with death. You are still the official historian of the court. By day, in the bright, airy halls of the palace, you write the wars of Justinian and the buildings. You dip your pen in golden ink and write panegyrics that praise the emperor's infinite wisdom, his piety, and the general's bravery. You write of a glorious empire that is expanding, building, and triumphing. You build a monument of words to a lie. But at night, by the light of a single flickering oil lamp, you write the truth. You dip your pen into a different inkwell. The shadows in the room seem to lean in, listening, conspiring. You are writing the secret history, anecdota. To be found with these pages would mean instant execution for treason. But the ink flows from your hand as if driven by a fever of its own. It is an act of purging, a catharsis of ink and bile. You look at the emperor now, through the lens of the last decade. and you do not see the glorious restorer of Rome. You see the man whose hubris brought the world to the brink. You write of his greed, his vanity, his demon-like energy that exhausted the resources of the state while the sky turned black and the people starved. You write of Theodora's cold cruelty. You pour all the trauma, the fear, and the horror of the last 14 years into these secret, dangerous pages. Your mind drifts back to the beginning. You see the blue, heatless sun that cast no shadows. You smell the rotting fields of Thrace. You hear the wet thud of bodies hitting the bottom of the towers in Psyche. You realize now, with a clarity that only age and survival can bring, that the true history of the world is not shaped by the decrees of emperors or the strategies of generals. It is shaped by the wind, by the sun, by the invisible flea. The Roman Empire, for all its stone and iron, for all its gold and law, was brought to its knees not by a rival army, but by nature itself. You finish the page. The ink glistens, wet and dangerous in the lamplight. You sand it dry. You gather the parchment and hide the manuscript away in a locked chest with a false bottom. It is a message in a bottle, thrown into the ocean of time, waiting for a future generation to find it and understand the true cost of the Golden Age. You blow out the lamp. The room plunges into darkness. Outside, the city sleeps, a survivor scarring over its deep wounds. The worst year to be alive is long over, but the memory of the darkness remains, etched into the stone of the city and the soul of the man who watched it fall. And so, the ink dries on the secret history of Procopius. The sun has returned, but the classical age of Rome has faded into the long, slow twilight of the Middle Ages. The years of the dust veil and the plague are over. The silence of the dead towers has been replaced by the quiet rhythm of a changed world. Your own long day is also coming to an end. Let the memory of the blue sun and the empty streets fade away. The history is written. The burden of remembering is no longer yours. If this journey into the shadowed past helped you find a moment of reflection, a quiet like is always deeply appreciated. And if you wish to join us for more stories from the lost corners of history, please consider subscribing. Thank you for walking through the dark year with me tonight. May your rest be deep and your tomorrow bright. Until our next story, good night.